What is up, faithful? Welcome back to an episode of Clutch Gene Sports. Man, oh man. Gronkowski went off on the 49ers, especially them not having enough playmakers. That's kind of interesting. Brock Purdy struggled against the Vikings. That's interesting. The Rams are more banged up than the Niners. That's crazy. All that stuff right after this. What up, my man? How's it going, Ron?
Doing good. We're in the middle of another fun week of football. Obviously, this last one wasn't as fun for Niner fans, but glad to be here, break it down, and talk about week 3.
And it was definitely an interesting game, especially when you look at the game plan and everything. A lot of blame to go around for a lot of different people, right? Like it's one of those ones where we could talk about in a minute. But um, how's fantasy going for you, man? Anyone have any fantasy questions? Go make sure you guys drop those fantasy questions. We'll try to get to some of those as well. How's fantasy going for you so far?
Hey, man, I can't complain. I'm 7-1. I have 4 leagues, a couple of one for fun, and then a couple of ones with some high school friends and some college friends, and so I'm 7-1. I can't complain. I just dropped, I think, 180 points in a league too, so I'm chilling.
That's great when you're 7-1, dropping 200 points in a game or 180 points in a game. That's my kind of style. I mean, I don't know what my record is in total, but I want to say one league I'm struggling in, and it's probably my most stacked league, and it's because I have injuries. So,
Oh, that sucks.
yeah, injury bugs are going around throughout the entire NFL this year. It just feels like fantasy is lower scoring this year than ever to start the year.
Tough, man. Yeah, that's the tough part.
And first and foremost, looking at everything, like, right, the 49ers have interesting games, right, where they tend to end up playing down to their competition. I felt like they played down to the Vikings level. Don't get me wrong. I think Brian Flores is a hell of a defensive coordinator. But what were your thoughts right after the game? You were watching it and everything like that. What was your expectations going in? And then as you're seeing this, what was your thoughts then and after you got to watch the film?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest. I thought the Niners were going to comfortably win. I thought they were going to cover. I thought that they would win by, I don't know if I forget my actual score prediction, but I thought that they were going to win pretty comfortably. We did mention last week, that there are some of the weird factors in this game. I don't know if they played out necessarily, but this one was, I think it's just a tough matchup for San Francisco. When you talk about the way that Minnesota plays on both sides of the ball, you've got really good coordinators. By coordinators, I mean Brian Flores defensively, one of the more unique minds. Brock Purdy even congratulated Flores for the scheme right after the game. And then Kevin O'Connell is one of the better play callers and one of the better, head coaches in the NFL, rising head coach. He's a guy who seemingly outcoached Nick Sorensen. And so when you look at it, hats off to the Vikings because they did what they had to do, converted on third down, stopped the 49ers on third down, won the turnover battle, or I think it was even actually. And then more importantly, just capitalized on the many opportunities that they had. You stopped the 49ers twice on on turnovers of turnover and downs. You forced some turnovers that was needed. And essentially you take the 49ers out of the places that they're comfortable with. You pressure Brock Purdy, throw a couple of different looks to confuse the offensive line. You try and jam up the main receivers. There were a lot of different things that I thought Minnesota did well in that game that ultimately led to their victory.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because you played the same exact team last year, right? Different, maybe a couple of players that are different, and whatnot, but same schemes. And I felt like the Niners just weren't prepared. But then at least when I was watching the game, right, I felt like we were unprepared. We weren't playing to our potential. And then I went back and I watched the film, and I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of things that were just missed. I felt like Brock, a lot of times there was guys that were open. He's not holding the ball a little too long, not throwing to those reads. Is that something you noticed when you watched the film, or is it more so Kyle Shanahan needs to be better offensively and he needs to create more wide open throws? I know a lot of people were mentioning, and I want you to get your take on this too, is the yards of separation that the receivers are gaining. There's a stat that's being thrown out, right? I think that stat's bullshit. I'm gonna just straight up and say it, that stat's bullshit.
Okay, because
Because
I was going to call it out as well, but go ahead.
the reason why I find it bullshit, Rohan, is because there's two things. When you look at this stat, what it's dictating or what it's showing is when a receiver is targeted, if he makes the catch or it's incomplete. It's not showing when a receiver is not targeted. So when fans are throwing this stat around, they're like, well, Brandon Aiyuk didn't get open. George Kittle's separation is the best. Debo can't create separation. It was like, no, one, you're looking at the stat wrong. The ball is going to these guys at that time. And that's that's what their average yards of separation is. If you look at Brandon Aiyuk across the entire game, he has about 3 to 4 yards of separation on almost every route that's not throwing the ball to him. If you look at George Kittle, he has separation. Debo Samuel, not so much, but there's times where he had more than that 1 yard of separation. So when I'm looking at this stat, I'm like, dude, fans are throwing this around, and they don't even know what the stat signifies or what the metric is looking at. If you look at what the 49ers film showed, there was dudes that were open, and I'm tired of just seeing um, the stat be thrown around when people were using it the wrong way, if that makes sense. But I'll let you go on that one.
And I'm going to add one more point because there were two things that really come to my mind when you talk about yards of separation. And I think it's fair to analyze in certain situations, but when a lot of people are using it the way they are to try and disprove the 49ers receivers as being able to separate, I think that there are some fallacies there. One, like Marco said, it only counts or charts the yards or the average separation on passes that you're thrown to. And two, it's also about the nearest defender. It's just the average separation between you and the nearest defender there. What happened in week two? Well, the 49ers didn't face a lot of man coverage. They faced one of the more zone heavy teams in the entire NFL. When you're talking about zones, guess what? When you're talking about zones, they're going to be these different windows that the Niners are going to try and capitalize on. And so, yes, the average amount of separation might not be as high, but the 49ers are putting receivers in a spot still where they can get yards after the catch. You're thinking, oh, average yards of separation, it's a tight window throw, you're not going to get yak. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think the 49ers find the best way to exploit windows. And even when the separation may not seem as much as you'd like, I think that that's another thing that you might be able to. I don't know if that's the best argument for this game specifically because, I know a couple of people put out how Brandon Aiyuk ran routes in this game. It was pretty clear that he himself was able to get separation, which is hopefully a good sign that he can get into a groove sooner than later.
Do you agree with the statement, Rohan, after watching the film? That dudes were wide open and Brock just didn't take the easy throws, and he was kind of trying to, in my opinion, I'll let you answer this one, then I'll answer this one right after you.
Yeah, I think it was twofold. One, if you're just wanting a simple answer, yes. I think that there were times where Brock Purdy passed up the checkdowns to try and find the second route, or not even the second route, but the main option. Instead of either he passed through an open route short to try and go and spread the ball downfield, or he didn't get off that route soon enough to come down to the check down. I did think that there were checkdowns open, but I also think that there are a couple of things that are important as well. One, average yards of distance. I think Brock Purdy it was pretty clear he's missing Christian McCaffrey. Why? On second and third and longs, you wouldn't see Brock consistently hit the check down last year, knowing that McCaffrey can get yards after the catch and more importantly, get first downs. This year, I don't know if he trusts for the check down option, even if it is Debo Samuel, to get that yardage. And essentially, I think in Brock's mind, if he's throwing a check down on 3rd and 12, he doesn't think he views it as a wasted throw because you're not able to then, end up going for it on 4th down, or something is going to happen where you end up short of the sticks. I think that that's the main thing. I think that that's what I'm kind of seeing. But also, it's unfortunate because you're right. Brock, right? He is missing some of those throws in terms of he is not getting to those checkdowns soon enough on certain plays. And that's something that you want to see improve because the most cliche thing that everyone's going to say is you got to take what the defense gives you. And we didn't see that enough on Sunday.
Looks like the chat's liking your little beard you're growing in there.
My
Like
winter
there.
beard,
Yeah.
guys. When I'm too lazy to shave or when I'm too lazy to get things right, this is how it's gonna be.
It'll probably grow in fully within like the next 3 days. Um, there's another comment that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, when I'm looking at the film, right, I felt like Brock is. This is how I left after watching the film, and I'm want you to answer this, Rohan, if I was wrong or if you agree or disagree with this.
Yeah, you're
When I
wrong.
watched the automatically wrong because it's me, right? Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
when I
go
was
ahead.
watching the film, this is how I felt. I felt like the 49ers offense or their quarterback is trying to prove to people or the fans, media, that he's this gunslinger where he wants to push the ball down the field, and he's holding the ball a little bit longer to see if that deeper route comes open. And I felt like that became an issue throughout this game because when you're going up against cover 2 and cover 4 consistently and is being disguised, sometimes you just got to check it down. And I think once you start checking it down, what happens is those check downs were available. The underneaths were available. And when you go to those underneaths, what's going to happen is those linebackers start to creep up, right? Those linebackers, they start seeing, oh, we're getting beat underneath for 6-7 yards every time. Those linebackers, instead of getting depth, they start to creep in. And what happens is it creates a bigger window for you to hit the deeper shot when you want to hit it consistently. And I felt like Brock at times, or even not even the deeper route, the intermediate routes become more open. And I felt like Brock was just trying to hold the ball and push the ball down the field a little too long. And that's what I saw on film. Did you feel that way or kind of felt like Brock wants to be the quarterback that pushes the ball down the field and not labeled as a dink and dunk quarterback or a quarterback that is going to dink it when he has to?
Now, I'm not going to say that the reason Brock Purdy isn't doing it is because of labels. I'm not going to say anything like that necessarily. But what I am going to say is it was unorthodox of him, right? Because, like I said before, you do see him hit the check down. So maybe he is feeling a little more pressure that he needs to make a bigger play because McCaffrey is not there, right? McCaffrey obviously being the top playmaker the Niners have offensively. If he's not there, Brock probably feels I've got to make a bigger play, understanding that we've got to keep moving the chains, we've got to move the ball. And also, there were some issues, right? He's working through some of the turnover concerns that he had, the interception, the fumble interception, whatever you want to call the second one, and so I think he was trying to account for that as well. But overall, I don't know if I'm going to tag it to he's feeling pressure that from the fans or something like that. But I'm more so going to say maybe he did want to make a bigger play, understanding that the check down that he normally resorts to maybe wouldn't have gotten the yardage that he would like.
I wouldn't say, and I might have worded that the wrong way, right? Not necessarily saying like he's
Yeah,
doing it because of the fans, but like the media talks about him, and they don't talk about him as in that category with the Mahomeses, the Josh Allen, and those top quarterbacks. It kind of felt like on Sunday he was trying to prove I'm a top quarterback. I don't need Christian McCaffrey. I don't need to have the offensive line be perfect. Now we're talking about the offensive line right now. But I think this is a good comment. Everyone keeps saying Aiyuk needs to step up. Aiyuk needs a QB to throw him the ball. Do you agree with this? Do you think Aiyuk needs to be force fed over the next couple of weeks or throughout the season? Because man, he's open.
He's open. He's open. I think that this though is a little bit of a remnant of him not being there in the offseason. I'm not going to blame Aiyuk. I'm not going to ever blame a guy for not wanting his money. But I don't think they're on the same page right now. And I didn't like, there were some really good throws in week one. You talk about the one specifically in the end zone. I think they're still working back that confidence together or that timing together because Kyle's offense is huge on timing. And I don't know if Brock himself is at the current pace that he wants to be when it comes to working in timing with BA. And I know that they've been together for quite some time now. I'm not saying that as an excuse necessarily. I just don't know if the comfortability is there right now. But I expect it because the urgency is there without Debo, without McCaffrey. I expect because the urgency is there for these two to start connecting a lot more come week 3.
There was a lot of people, Rohan, on Twitter, social media. I go on Facebook every once in a while just to see what 49er fans. I'm in a lot of 49er groups, right? Just to see what they're talking about. Talk to my family, stuff like that regarding the 49ers. And a lot of people were blaming the offensive line. A lot of people like, oh, the offensive line sucks. They're below average. I disagree. This is one of the first times I've disagreed with or actually have said the offensive line looks really good outside of, we'll get to a certain player, but I thought the offensive line and pass pro looked really good. I thought they were a little bit above average. I would put them in that top, if I had to give them a ranking, a top 13 range of offensive lines across the NFL from what I've saw watching other games on Sunday and other games on other days. I felt like our offensive line really held up against a lot of blitzes and stunts and different things. Do you see the 6 sacks that everyone keeps mentioning? Oh, well, Brock Purdy got sacked 6 times. Do you see those sacks being on the offensive line, or were they more on Purdy? I know 2 of them were on Purdy. I'm going to give those exact 2. There was one where he goes to scramble. It was earlier in the game. Instead of throwing away, I believe it was like a 2nd and 10, maybe a 1st and 10. He just dives at the defensive lineman's ankles, minus like 3 yards, 4 yards. Right, that's considered a sack. And then another one, he's scrambling and he tries to dive back to the line of scrimmage. That's considered another sack. So those 2 automatically are on the offensive line. So like when people are throwing out the 6 number of sacks, that's already not a correct stat. But do you think those other 4 are on Brock, or do you think they're on the offensive line? And do we have offensive line issues, whether it's in the run game or pass game?
Yeah, like you pointed out, that 2 of the sacks were not really sacks. You know, the one he dives back to the line of scrimmage, he's just short, ends up being called a sack, even though it's kind of more of a rush, I would say. Second one, his fumble for some reason was called a sack. I don't know why. But regardless, you look at the other 4, there were a couple that you could put on Brock, and there were a couple I think you could put on the O-line. There was, if I'm remembering the plays properly, and first actually just talking about the overarching topic, right? Because a lot of you pointed out the offensive line play. I think the offensive line play, has been pretty solid. The offensive line play, they gave Brock 3.02 seconds for time to throw this past week. Brock's time to throw has been a lot higher than you'd expect, and that's why a lot of people are pointing out, the state of Brock Purdy maybe not taking the checkdowns as much, because that usually where he goes progression to progression to progression. That's usually where he's able to kind of, simulate through and get the ball out quickly. But I don't know necessarily that all 6 of the sacks were on Brock. Oh, sorry, on the offensive line. I don't think so. The first one, I believe, was one where you have Brandon Aiyuk coming, like they're playing zone coverage. Brandon Aiyuk has a short route right in front of Brock. For some reason, Brock doesn't fire that immediately. He looks to the second read, which I believe on that play was George Kittle. If he fires that to Aiyuk, it's probably 6 yards. You move on. You got to just take what the defense gives you there instead of trying to focus in on taking more of an explosive play to Kittle. I think the first one was on Brock. Then you talk about the, what do you call it? I think there was one other one, which is the one that I was alluding to earlier, 3rd and 12. 3rd and 12, you've got the check down open. And this is one where Brock is, again, looking downfield, not taking the check down. And this might be, a big issue of why, since CMC's not there, Brock's not maybe comfortable taking the check down necessarily, just knowing that you might not be able to get it. But you got to throw the check down. You can't take a sack on 3rd and 12. So that one I would consider on Brock. The other 2, I think, were more so offensive line, or, I believe that there was one where Brock was sacked within in under 2.5 seconds. That one was more on the offensive line, just a really good dial up on the blitz from Flores, where he was able to, throw things off of balance. And then the other one, which was right around 2.5 seconds, that one was interesting because you feel that Purdy has a window to throw the ball, but the free rusher is coming right at him because I didn't think the offensive line picked it up that well. And because of that, Brock gets sacked. So I'd say 2 and 2.
Corey Soto says, Rohan, get out of here. You need CMC to throw a check down.
I'm not saying you need CMC to throw a check down. I'm not crediting Brock for not throwing the check down. I'm trying to explain the reasoning as to why he might not be willing to throw the check down as often as he did last year when the check down was such a viable option in the 49ers offense. There's a clear difference right now between last year and this year. The biggest question right now is he's taking longer to throw the football and he's taking more sacks, right? There's not, you usually don't take 4 sacks, Brock Purdy specifically, and he usually gets the ball out much quicker than 3.02 seconds per throw. And so the when you look at the film, he isn't taking some of those checkdowns. And so to me, yeah, I do agree. You do
Oh, my
want
bad.
to.
Corey isn't directing it at you. He said
My
my
fault.
comment. Where at? Where he
My
at?
fault. But
And
you are right in the sense you do have to find a way to throw the checkdowns, and I think it's more so comfortability. Brock has to trust those receivers, those running backs, those tight ends, whoever it might be able to make the play once he completes the pass.
But I do want to talk a little bit about Corey's comment about CMC a little bit. Like, CMC not being there, people don't realize. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we don't need CMC. We have Jordan Mason. Yeah, Jordan Mason can run the ball. He's running the ball probably out of the best running backs in the league by far. Like, he's up there as a running back. Like, he is showing it. But as a receiver, CMC is such a threat as a receiver out of the backfield that he's like a gravity pull. You have linebackers wanting to go after him, even though he's not their guy, because he's such a gravity. And it pulls things, it opens things over the middle, it opens things other ways. So even though necessarily CMC isn't the go-to guy on that check down, you might have someone in the flat, right, opposite of CMC, but a linebacker goes the wrong way, and now you have a guy open. That's what CMC brings, and I think that's something that the 49ers are missing right now. They're missing the gravitational pull from Christian McCaffrey, and no one's really talking about it. Christian McCaffrey is very impactful even without the ball. And the fact that he's not there and things aren't wide ass open, this is where you're seeing those linebackers are staying there because you're not taking the check down. They're not going to creep up. If CMC is normally there, even if you're not checking it down, they're kind of giving CMC the respect, because if they don't take away those yards, right? CMC gets the ball and you're 6 yards away, you're not tackling him one-on-one. So what they like to do, they like to make it 3 to 2 yards where they're on him as fast as they can. And what that does is it opens the next level. And that's right now what I'm seeing from the offense when I'm watching. I'm like, man, CMC's impact without the ball is drastic right now, and it's showing, because it's obviously you can see Brock not wanting to throw those balls into the windows. Normally he throws with anticipation. That's his best attribute. That's as going with his mind, right? So seeing Brock Purdy not throwing with anticipation and getting through reads, right? He's getting through his reads. He's just not throwing with anticipation. If he throws with anticipation, those guys are open. And to me, that's what I'm most concerned about right now. It's he's not trusting what he's seeing, because when he trusts what he sees, he throws with A+ anticipation. There was another comment I wanted to get to along the offensive line. Jake Brendel, man. I've been saying Jake Brendel is probably one of the worst offensive linemen.
You've said it for what, 2 years now?
Man, he's
dating back to the
terrible.
year where he somehow was named a Pro Bowl alternate.
It's bad, bro. Bad. Like, this year's even worse. Like, I don't think he's fully healed from that knee injury he dealt with in training camp. It's bad. Getting thrown off the club in the run game, getting put on his ass in pass pro, and not even just last week. Both weeks so far, he's gotten his ass handed to him, and it's kind of quite embarrassing if you ask me. Like, you might have to, as soon as Feliciano comes back, you might have to start Feliciano right away, because that's how bad it's looked on film. And it sucks to say, but throwback, you are right. The worst player of the game was Jake Brendel. He's been one of the worst offensive linemen on the 49ers for the past couple of years. Now, I want to get into some of the comments that were made from Debo, Gronkowski, and that before we get into the preview of the Rams game, or talk about the Rams game. But first, let me get to this one question or comment. I'm worried about the run game. This has been a problem for a long time. Our ends can't set an edge, including Bosa. Floyd literally got picked up twice trying to set the edge. Ron, do we have a run game issue defensively?
We talked about it right in the beginning of the, what do you call it? We talked about it in the beginning.
You and I have been talking about it since before the draft.
Yeah, we did. And I don't know. I think last week, I don't want to say this and have it backfire, because I don't know if it's the right word. I think last week was a bit of an anomaly. And the reason is, when you look
last
at the
week, as in Jets or Vikings?
Vikings.
Okay.
And the reason is when you look at the way they defended Aaron Jones versus in the end of the game when Ty Chandler was running, there's a clear difference in the way that they were playing. Aaron Jones was limited to just 32 yards on the ground, 9 carries, 32 yards, under 4 yards per carry. It was only later in the game when you see these guys specifically on that, what do you call it, on the 14 play drive where Ty Chandler's getting 11 yards on certain plays. He's slowly moving up the field, even though that the Niners knew it was those last two drives. Those were the two killer drives for the run game. But when you look at the way that that happened, it was the last drive. I don't know if it's excusable. The drive before is when the Niners had their momentum killed and fumbled the football after they got the ball back and were down 20-7. There were some of those stretch plays. And so the one thing I will say that is a concern might be the stretch plays. But the Aaron Jones is pretty good at those stretch plays. The Niners were able to limit him. And they also limited Breece Hall in the stretch game in the week one. And so I'm going to still say this is a wait and see because I think that the defense was put in inopportune situations last week that hurt them, and they were ultimately able to kind of overcome it with turnovers. Now, turnovers don't happen week to week, but the Niners have been creating them at a high rate defensively, and if this is how they're able to play, specifically if this is how Fred Warner is able to play,
Oh
I
my!
think that you have a little bit less of a worry about the
If
run
Fred
game.
Warner plays like this all season, Rohan, he's in the conversation for the MVP, not just Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, and that's insane, right? Just the way that he's played the first 2 weeks is insane. And so the reason that I'm excusing them a bit is because I do think that they were put in a few inopportune situations. But the point that I like here is the edges, right? Because it's those stretch plays that have kind of been a struggle for the Niners, specifically when Ty Chandler was running in that game. That's something that I'm going to keep my eye out going forward. Is this going to be a problem, or was it more so the situation that kind of caused some of those issues this past week?
I think too, you'll see a little bit of change as the team gets healthy, right? With run fits, Hufanga is going to help with the run fits a lot more than Odom, in my opinion. I think he's a much better run fitter. Same thing with Brown. You have guys like Yetur Gross-Matos who will probably be in more than Leonard Floyd on rundowns. So the defense, the edges will be starting to look a little bit different. For me, it's the interior of the defensive line. That's where I'm concerned. But like Rohan said, it's kind of a wait and see. Corey, I do see your question regarding Brock Purdy. We will get to this one a little bit later. I want to get through this, and then we'll get to this one a little bit later because this is a longer conversation. But I will get to that one. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that one. Radar says, what do you guys think of Puny so far? Pass pro, he looks phenomenal. Run game, I thought the last 2 weeks he struggled. Even though the Niners average, what was it, like 8 yards a carry running to the right side last week one. I actually think he's struggling in the run game. He's getting blown off the ball a little bit. He's not taking the right steps. His left step when they're going right is more of a horizontal than downhill. So it's a lot of little different things, but I think Puny has been good. He's what you expect from a rookie. In terms of those struggles, you're expecting for a rookie to have struggles. You're not expecting a rookie drafted in the third round to come in and be an all-pro right away, right? Like that's never gonna happen. It's rare that it happens, and you gotta hold him to what he is. He's a rookie at the end of the day, and he's playing at a very high level. So I think right now what the Niners have and Dominic Puny is a hell of a guard because he's an upgrade from what they had last year in pass pro. In the run game, it's about a wash, maybe a little bit worse in the run game, but hey, he's a rookie and he's going to continue getting better week in, week out. That's what I think on him. Rohan, should we go ahead and go to the Gronk stuff first, or should we talk about Debo segment where he talked about the best team in the NFL?
Let's go Gronk and then we'll go Debo.
All right, cool. Let me pull that up. Have you watched it? I know I sent it to you because I was like,
I
"Hey,
have
we're gonna
not.
talk about
I saw the quote, but I have not watched it.
All right, cool. Since you didn't watch it, even better because I sent this to you so we could watch it. Let me go ahead and pull it up. So you see how that works, guys? I send Rohan something like, "Hey, we're gonna talk about this on the show today," and he's like, "All right, yeah, I won't watch it." Like, bro, come on.
Yeah, he sent it at 4:14. I'm in Central Time. I'm not gonna lie, I went to sleep, so I did not see it after the
He
video.
said
I was like,
I took a nap. That
yeah.
definitely sounds like a college student to me. Shout out to Ashley Ariana tuning in. Like, make sure you guys hit that
Thank
like
you.
and subscribe button on both channels, Rohan Chakravarty's personal as well as Clutching Sports. So, can you see it? If I make it big screen, can you see it?
Yeah, we got it.
All right, cool.
Deebo Samuel, he'll miss a couple of weeks.
Can you guys hear it? Did you hear her?
We're good.
All right, cool.
Deebo Samuel, he'll miss a couple of weeks with a calf injury. Some people, critics, if you will, they're saying that Purdy's only successful because of the guys that are around him and the system. How will he do without his stars, do you think?
I mean, that will definitely give us a test to see where Purdy is. I mean, you got Samuel going to be out. Christian McCaffrey's going to be out.
Who do they have this week?
But
Let me look.
they got so many weapons. I don't know why they're not producing. Why are they not putting up points like the New Orleans Saints every single week in and week out? That's the problem with the 49ers last year as well, is that they dominated some games, and then some games they just didn't show up and they couldn't produce. They should be producing week in and week out, especially with offensive-minded coach Kyle Shanahan, and then with all the weapons that they have. They need that it guy. I feel like they got a lot of weapons, but they just don't have like an it guy to turn it up. Yeah, Aiyuk, I mean, he's a great guy, but look, he was holding out
George
the whole
Kittle?
time. George Kittle, they're great
Four-time
players.
All-Pro?
But I'm talking,
What do
you
you
need
mean?
an it guy, like an it guy.
Who's
Like Adelman was an it guy.
Are you telling
like the
me
guy
that Kittle's not an it guy?
He's an it guy, but like I'm talking, like when it comes to crunch time, it's hey, feed me that ball. I feel like they're great playmakers, and they all rely on the other one to make the play because there's so many great weapons. You know what I mean? When you have so many great players around you, you rely, oh, he's going to make the play. That guy's going to make the play. But when you don't have so many, like when Edelman was out there for
Brady made
myself out there, it's give me that ball, feed me the ball.
Edelman missed a lot of time, and you missed a lot of time, and Brady made it guys out of Chris Hogan.
Brady was the it guy.
No disrespect to Hogan,
and
but
Hogan was kind of an it guy too. He had that mentality of feed me the ball, I want it, I'm going to do whatever.
It's mentality.
It's mentality, and I feel like Trent Williams has that mentality.
Yeah.
He would go out there and he tosses people around. That's what you want. And he's doing it 24/7.
Are you calling out the grittiness of this team? What are you doing,
just
Rob?
That mentality. I mean, they should be dominating.
Yeah.
They should be. No matter who's on the field or whoever's down. They have so many replacement players as well. Their roster's stacked.
Wow. Rohan. He went in on the Niners a little bit. Like he didn't hold back. And what's crazy is this. If that would have been someone like you or I doing that, going in on the Niners like that, we'd be shit talked, right?
Yeah.
Crazy part is you can't talk to someone who's a Super Bowl champion and knows what it takes to win a ring.
And maybe that's true. I
maybe
guess
you could push back, right? You could obviously push back. You can't tell him, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about, though. That's one thing you can't say because obviously he's won a Super Bowl. Bro, what's your reaction to Gronk talking about the 49ers needing to blow everyone out?
I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about this because there are certain things that he said specifically about last year. He said last year that they should have blown guys out when
he's talking about this year. He's talking about this year.
I know, but he also pointed out last year. He dated back to last year. And that's the part I don't understand. The Niners were they scored the third most points in the NFL last year, behind Dallas and behind Miami. They were one of the more high octane offenses. You look at any statistic, touchdowns, yards, whatever it is. The Niners are top 3 or top 5. They scored 30 points, I believe, in I think it was like 8 or 9 games at least 30 points in like 9 games or so. And they were blowing some teams out. They had the one rough stretch that you could really point out was when they lost 3 games in a row. Lost to Cleveland, lost to Minnesota, lost to Cincinnati. You had Trent out, you had Deebo out. Not an excuse necessarily. Those were some ugly games. And then you lost, obviously, to Baltimore. But nonetheless, the Niners were one of the best teams last year. Specifically, though, about this year, if you're talking about their it guy is McCaffrey. Their it guy is Christian McCaffrey. And
but is he that it guy?
I believe so.
Is he someone you could? It's because you could think like what I got from Gronk when he's talking about it guy. It's someone you throw the ball to or you give the ball to in any situation, right? With CMC, you can't really give him the ball in any situation. You can't just throw it up to him and he go get it, or you throw it to him and he's gonna for sure come down with it, right? And if he does, like, he has to make like a play. Now he can, but in the Super Bowl, he didn't show to be the it guy. Fumbled in the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's something I think he's also referencing is, do the Niners have the mentality? Because I think too, with this also goes to too, and I felt like I would love to have. I wish Kay would have followed up with, well, then what's your take on Debo saying that they're the best team in the league?
Yeah, he could have. She could have. Excuse me. To me, McCaffrey is the it guy, and I understand your point, and your point is also, can it guys truly be running backs given the way that the NFL has changed, given the way that the passing game is dominant, and that when you need a play, you're going to have to go to the passing game, which more likely means you have to go to the receivers. And it's tough, though, to be the it guy in San Francisco when you have so many weapons. I think that that's also true, because when you look at a lot of other teams where there's a true alpha dog, the reason that they're the alpha dog is, one, not only because they have the pedigree, but two, because they get the requisite volume to be the alpha dog. That's why I point to McCaffrey. He's the one guy that I know will get a significant load of volume in every situation. Between the numbers, or between the 20s in the red zone, he had the most touches in the red zone last year of any player in the NFL. That's why I go to him, because when you look at the rest of the guys, I don't think they get ample enough volume for you to maybe consider them as it guys, or for them to even be characterized or qualified to even be in that category. And I don't think that that's on them. I do think that some of the things that Gronk says are, the reason that I push back is because when you look at the early portion of the season, the Niners aren't the only team that has struggled at some point. You look at the NFL, right? And the 2-0 teams right now, the 2-0 teams are not who you expect to be 2-0.
But do those teams that are struggling, do they have as many playmakers as the Niners? And I think that's what Gronk's point is the Niners have so many playmakers, even when someone goes down. For example, I know he didn't mention it, but he kept mentioning how stacked the team is. When CMC went down, they have the leading rusher in the NFL still. Like, that's what he's like, dude, they're so stacked that there's no excuses for the 49ers to not be coming in and dropping 30 points on every team they're playing, or shutting teams out, because
But that's not the reality, in my opinion, of the NFL. And I understand your point. You're right. The Niners have enough playmakers. They have an ample amount of playmakers. But I also do think that there are certain matchups that just don't benefit them. A matchup like this, right, where the things that you want to do, one, to put 30 points up on somebody's head, you want to create explosive plays. The Niners did that on the ground. They weren't able to in the air. Even though Brock Purdy had a strong time to throw, they weren't able to in the air because those opportunities didn't arise necessarily before pressure came. And I'm not saying that that's on the receivers. I'm not saying that that's on Brock. Go ahead.
That's also too, though, to the point of Gronk, because, right, if you have that it guy, it doesn't matter if they're covered. They're gonna come down with the ball, right? Like, if you have, for example,
here's what I'll say.
Was Gronk an it guy? Right, he was. We can both agree to that.
Yeah.
In certain situations like that, when Brady's getting blitzed, he could throw it up and he knows Gronk's coming down with it. That ball's not 50-50. It's more of a 70-30, 80-20 ball. So that's kind of what I think Gronk is referencing here. Is Edelman was going to 100% create separation. He was going to be open. Gronk was going to win a 50-50 ball. And I think that's kind of what he's going about the 49ers, is they don't have anyone that can be that guy. And then he also mentioned Brock, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I don't know if Edelman, I like Edelman. I don't know if he would be in that category, but the specific example I wanted to kind of point out is a game that I watched a good portion, if not almost all of that game this week. Kansas City versus Cincinnati. Jamar Chase is the de facto it guy, right, when it comes to Kansas City. So when it comes to Cincinnati. So what does Kansas City do? Not only do they put their top cornerback on him, they bracket and double him. And so that forces Cincinnati to throw to the tight ends. There's a reason that guys like, Mike Gesicki, Eric All, and Drew Sample had so much volume to this past week in Cincinnati. It's because they're trying to eliminate the quote-unquote it guy. And so when you have an it guy, there's a clear de facto who you look to, but there's also a clear de facto for the defense to try and eliminate and then tell you to go and defend the other weapons. More similarly, I don't know if he can be put on the same category yet, but in New York, Garrett Wilson is the clear it guy. Do you expect the it guy to only have 59 yards, of which 26 came on one play on the final play of the drive? No, but that's the reason other teams expect him to go get the ball because there aren't other weapons there. And so you're kind of, as a defense, you expect that, you prepare for that, and you either bracket, you double, you find a different way for that guy to end up not getting the ball and the other guys to beat you. And so to me, that's why I think the it guy thing is not as important to me, just because there are certain situations where the defense is able to take them away because you're able to double them.
But are we giving the it guy label to the wrong players? Right? Like Garrett Wilson, is he really an it guy? Because
no, that's a good question.
I think there's very limited it guys in the NFL, right? I think it's very limited. CeeDee Lamb, he's one of them. Justin Jefferson, he's one of them. Like there's very limited on guys. Is Brandon Aiyuk one of those? I don't know, because they don't feed him like if he's an it guy, right? But when you look at Justin Jefferson, the Niners should hit no other. There's no other threat in that receiving game that should be a threat to the 49ers defensively, right? And he beats him over the top for a 99-yard, 98-yard touchdown, whatever it was. That's an it guy. Like, you can throw me the ball, I'm going to be open. Don't worry about me. I'm going to do me, right?
No, you're right. I totally actually agree with that point. The sense that there really aren't that many it guys in the NFL. My point is, I don't think it matters when it comes to winning football games as much. I think that maybe back in the past, it might have mattered a little more. Currently, though, when you look at the teams that are winning Super Bowls, I don't think it matters as much for you to have a de facto it guy. Hell, Patrick Mahomes was relying on guys like Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman to go win, to go win the Super Bowl and get touchdowns.
But he's an it guy. But Mahomes is an it guy.
Yeah, Mahomes is. I'm saying the receiver himself. I'm saying the receiver themselves.
But like Gronk said though, right? Because we're also talking about the Gronk thing. Gronk also mentioned, because Kay was like, "Well, you miss a lot of time, and so did Julian Edelman. Who was the it guy for you guys?" He said, he laughed. Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady's
if we're involving quarterback in that discussion, then it's a completely different discussion. And so, I understand it there.
And this is where I think it's interesting, because he also mentions Brock Purdy needing to step up with a lot of these guys out, right? With Christian McCaffrey and Debo out. These next couple of weeks are very crucial for a Brock Purdy, right? He struggled against teams when he's had a player down or two. Now, he struggled against blitzes, against cover 2, cover 4, because they're making windows tighter. What do you need to see? Because Gronk kind of what I took from, I'll be honest, what I took from Gronk was the Niners are too stacked of a roster with playmakers around them, and I felt like Gronk was doing everything he could to not talk about Brock Purdy in that situation. He didn't want to have to be put and be that first person in the media to say Brock Purdy was an issue. I felt like during that time, because he mentioned, when she was like, "Well, you guys were out. So what are you trying to say?" And then that's when he's like, "Well, Tom Brady." And I felt like that was because he didn't want to say Brock needs to be the it guy. He needs to show he's an it guy, because right now he's not. But from what I took from that was these next couple of games, right? You could see if Brock is an it guy. Is he that dude that could be someone who you could send pressure. I know where I'm going with the ball. You could now. What happens, for example, teams don't like blitzing certain quarterbacks. They don't like blitzing Mahomes, really. They don't like blitz. They hated blitzing Tom Brady, because you blitz Tom Brady, he's making you pay. At some point, Brock Purdy needs to make these teams pay for blitzing. At some point, even if it's a check down for 10 yards, make them pay. And I think that's kind of what I felt from Gronk. I'm curious to see what you felt. If you felt like that was a shot, because he did say that Brock Purdy needs to step up. Do you feel like that's something that needs to happen over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that this is, a lot of people have alluded to it. This is Brock Purdy. This is the chance for Brock Purdy. And you get a pretty ample opportunity this week. No shade to the Rams. You're going to get a really good opportunity this week to, get yourself back on track, have some great confidence, and, get that relationship with Brandon Aiyuk back, or the connection with him, back on track. The Rams suck right now. They suck. They lost 41-10 to the Arizona Cardinals.
They don't suck. They're hurt.
Now. I said right now. They suck right now. They are a bottom 5, bottom 10 team in the NFL. Maybe even bottom 10 is too nice. This roster right now is really bad for the Rams. They have an offensive line that is completely makeshift. They're all injured. You've got your top 2 receivers out. The defense was already a work in progress after you lost a lot of guys, notably Aaron Donald. And they've got a lot of young guys. That secondary is still one that's kind of struggling. Maybe the addition of Akella Witherspoon will hopefully help them in that department. But right now, that team does not look good. And this is a team the Niners have generally just had success against. So I agree. This is a time for Brock to kind of step up. But when you also look at it, it kind of works out in his favor. You've got the Rams in week 3. Then you return home. You've got the New England Patriots in week 4. They've got a good defense, but that's a team that, you should be able to beat at home. And then you've got the Arizona Cardinals in week 5 in what I think could be a very high-scoring game because Arizona's
that's
got
going to be a shootout,
defense.
bro. I ain't going to lie. That might be a shootout.
Yeah, the Arizona's got a really good offense right now. They don't have that great of a defense. And so that's another good opportunity for Brock, And so that's the way I look at it.
And I feel like it sucks to talk about Brock in this aspect, right? Because he was really good last year. And I've been very vocal about I wasn't sold on what I saw because of certain things like this team's going to be running more cover 2, cover 4, and it makes it harder on a quarterback like Brock with the limitations he has. But I feel like at some point you got to just start making those tougher window throws. You have to attempt them, even if it's intercept. You got to find out what you can do. And I felt like at the end of the day, if he's not the it guy, and I feel like I have to bring this question up because I know I was going to answer. I told Cody I'd answer it. He asked Marco, if it turns out Purdy isn't a franchise quarterback and the team can't tie their future to him, what do the 49ers do at quarterback? Great question. One, we don't know if Brock's a franchise quarterback or not. Let's give me another 10. Give me up to week 10. After week 10, I'll tell you if he's the franchise quarterback. Because you're going to go up against a lot of teams who've already seen Brock. Teams have already given a recipe to beat the 49ers and Brock Purdy. Hopefully Christian McCaffrey is back. And you can see when Christian McCaffrey comes back, what does Brock look different? Is he extremely reliant on Christian McCaffrey? Because if you're extremely reliant on one player as a quarterback, that's an issue. Especially because remember, when we're talking about Brock, it's not Brock Purdy being a franchise quarterback. Because obviously franchise quarterbacks are the top quarterbacks in the league, right? Like some of them aren't the top, but they're still considered a franchise quarterback because their team paid them. But we're talking about Brock as being a potential $65 million quarterback. You're eventually going to lose some talent around you. Can you carry a team with less talent? I think that's something that it's a conversation that will be had throughout the season. But I felt like this 1 week shouldn't make it where we're all of a sudden the sky is falling and, oh my gosh, Brock isn't a franchise quarterback. He still has enough on his resume to show that he's a good enough quarterback to be a franchise guy. Now, if it starts to change and this is a reoccurring occurrence every other week where he's struggling against teams, then that's when we have the conversation. Rohan, do you think he's shown that he isn't a franchise quarterback yet? Some people in the chat are saying he's not worth $65 million already.
I think it's too early to tell. I mean, he's had one season as a starter under your belt. Now you can make your assumptions based off of that, and you could definitely. I think it's better to just be a prove it kind of mindset. I'm not going to make any definitive mark. Brock Purdy is not going to be a franchise quarterback for the 49ers. Brock Purdy cannot be a franchise quarterback because we have one full season of Brock under that we've seen. It's too small a sample size, and more importantly, the things that you want him to prove, while he's had some opportunities to prove them, you need to give him more, and that's what the season's about. Now, this is a crucial decision for the 49ers, and I've alluded to this before. I think the decision is going to be made for them, just because you don't have the option really to. Who else are you going to go for? And it's if you don't believe Brock is a franchise quarterback, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, hold on. I've never seen the chat like this before. Can you guys answer this question for me? Ron, I've never seen the chat talking about Brock this way. Are you guys losing faith in Brock Purdy right now? I've never seen my chat like this ever. They're always talking shit to me because I'm negative about Brock. I'm the one who's being more positive about Brock than the chat right now, and that's a first. So I'm in shock. Are you guys losing?
I just noticed you have a backward A's hat on, bro.
You just realized that?
Yeah. No, I always
Just
expect the
say,
White Sox hat.
on a
I
on a
just
on a
noticed the
scale of
Tampa
one
Bay
on a
hat.
scale of 1 to 10, how high are you? We've been freaking streaming for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I haven't looked at your face at all. I usually try and tune you out. I have like a, I'll either put my phone up or I'll put my Niners flag up just to your face to cover that shit. Excuse my
Bro,
language,
I'm hella
but like,
dead.
yeah,
Bro, they don't believe he's a 65 million or 60 million. That's just crazy. This is
it's
this is the
that Dak
first
contract. Dak contract doesn't change things, huh?
it's the first time I've seen the my chat reacting that way towards Brock Purdy. Normally they're like, Marco, you're a hater. Blah, blah, blah. I think this last game may have
I mean,
changed their
you are
feelings
a
on
hater
Brock.
though. Let's just
Yeah,
make that
I'm
clear.
not a
Like,
hater. I'm just trying to say what I see.
no, you are a hater.
The thing is, though, Rohan, is I know with a lot of look at this Rams fan trying to say to pay him. I didn't mean to cut you off. You can go ahead and finish. That's just crazy. I've never seen that. Like they're consistently saying this, and it's blown my mind.
Yeah, but the point being, just for me, it's too early to tell. But my point is, the Niners, I don't think they're going to be really given a choice. I don't think that they're going to be given a choice. I think that when you look at the Niners and the way that things, are going to go for them, they're not going to be in a position to get an upgrade anytime soon. At
I
least in the
disagree
draft.
there. There's
At
a
least in
second
the
part to the
draft, I don't
question.
know. And so, yeah. Well,
If he's
an
not the
option.
franchise quarterback, right? So this is the
You-
second part to the question. What do the
you're
49ers do
saying,
at quarterback?
yeah, they would franchise him and they trade him.
You think so?
Yeah.
If Cool's good now let's answer the second part of the question, right? Because it was a two-parter. One kind of is he a franchise quarterback? Is yes or no? What would you do if you're the Niners and you don't think he's a franchise quarterback?
Franchise and trade him.
Do you let him play next year on that fourth year?
Oh no. I mean, oh wait.
Remember, he's in his third year.
Yeah. So
he may sit out. He may sit out, and the Niners could play hardball, and they could say, "Well,
oh shoot, no. My fault. Let me regather my thoughts. He's in a fourth year, not franchise. Just trade him before the fourth year. That's what you'd have to do.
This was my conversation because someone called me last night. They're asking me this. They're obviously a friend of the show, and they were asking, and the question was they had asked kind of pretty much the same question, and I told them what I would do personally. Sorry, Brock, I'm not trading you this year. Next offseason, you're gonna play out your fourth year of your contract. I'll give you a little bonus, a little pay raise for that 1 year, which the Niners could do because it'd be a 1 year extension, right? And then I would tell all my scouts, which quarterback are we taking in that first round? Cam Ward, come on down. If you probably will be there in that range, let him sit for 1 year.
But
you let Brock
be that quarterback that you select. I'm telling you, has got to be as good as Brock Purdy. Otherwise, it's a miss. It's just how it is.
Is it a miss though? Because you're playing money, but
it's an indictment on the. It's not an indictment on the quarterback. It's an indictment on the coaching staff. If you ultimately make the decision, the coaching staff in the front office, if you make that decision, you have to end up finding a way to make the Super Bowl and win it with whoever the replacement is, and they have to be better than Brock.
If they don't win with Brock now, if they don't win this year with Brock, it's 2 years in a row that they don't win with Brock, right? So then wouldn't you be able to push your ownership and say, hey, look, we're going to play Moneyball with the quarterback situation. We don't believe Brock could win us a Super Bowl, but we're going to go after a quarterback. He may not be as good as him. He may be better than him. We don't know. We're going to draft him. We think this guy has the potential to be a legit quarterback in the NFL. If he is going to be better than Brock. If he is not, he's not going to be much worse. And we won with less than Brock. We won with Jimmy Garoppolo. And we should be able to compete for a Super Bowl still. So don't worry about not competing, because with the less cap numbers and everything, we could keep a stronger team around this young quarterback for a longer time. And now it opens up our window a tad bit longer.
The way that I'm thinking about the stronger team, you're already paying everybody. Everybody's already getting older. This team isn't going to be stronger. It's going to be the same level that it is right now.
Well, you keep drafting. You keep drafting.
Oh, yeah, you keep drafting. No, that's for sure. But you also go through a similar cycle that you're going through right now, because as you keep drafting, you're also going to have to let go of some of those guys that you were going to pay a good amount to, or end up already paying a good amount to. And so my question is, And I'm not saying that I believe that another quarterback can't take you to the Super Bowl or that I believe that Brock is going to be the one that ultimately takes you this year. I'm just saying, in the Niners' eyes, I don't know if they're going to find an option that they believe is going to be better than Brock, ultimately forcing them to settle.
Yeah, and then absolutely, like
And
that's right. Like,
that's what every team, right, this offseason. There are a lot of quarterbacks that you could question, are they worth that $50+ million? Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott just got $60 million
those
because of all the
quarterbacks
weapons
aren't
that he got.
deserving of it. The first two aren't deserving of it. Dak is
Exactly.
questionable. I mean, but
And exactly. But the thing is, those teams, what they felt, they don't have any other option. And so you're going to have to pay the quarterback.
I
Just
think they
how it
do
is.
have an option, Rohan. They do have the option. What you know what it is? It's coaches and general managers are scared because their jobs are always on the line, right? And
Correct.
this is what it is. It's the moment you are fearful for your job is you're gonna get complacent with the quarterback that you're fine with winning with this guy, right? For
But didn't
example,
you know 2 weeks ago that John Lynch might have some smoke?
I mean, yes, but right, like
And
when you're
wouldn't a move like this only further that type of smoke?
yes,
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just looking in the eyes of the front office
no,
because
no,
they're the
absolutely,
ones who would
and
take the biggest.
that's a great way
Yeah.
to look at it. But like across the NFL, the reason why those teams pay those quarterbacks isn't because they feel like they could win with the quarterback. They just don't want to lose their jobs. Where, for example, Campbell and whoever the GM and in Detroit is, right? They're afraid that the moment they go out and they draft a quarterback or they trade for a quarterback, their time clock is ticking. If they don't win a Super Bowl, they have 2 years and then they're gone. And I feel like that's what the NFL is super pushing on. And if you look at the Niners, they haven't won a Super Bowl in 8 years, 7 years with Kyle Shanahan. Dude, Kyle Shanahan's clock ain't ticking anytime soon. He could draft another quarterback in the first round. And he'll still have another 5 years with the organization. So it's like you have the luxury of the ownership to give you, hey, you know what? If you don't believe in him, I would rather not pay him $65 million and be in the situation of a Detroit Lions, of a Miami Dolphins, of these other organizations where they overpaid for their quarterback and now their cap numbers in a few years are going to be drastic and they can't upgrade at that spot or move off of that quarterback. So I think you can do it if the ownership and the head coach have the stability to let you make that decision, right? Because it's a hard decision to do because you better keep winning the moment you bring in a new quarterback. The moment you stop winning, and for example, if the Detroit Lions had brought in a quarterback this in the draft, and then he ends up playing next year and they start losing, Campbell's gone within a year. You're not a good enough coach. It's gone within a year.
Exactly.
So I feel like that's what the Niners, they have the stability at head coach to do something that is not along the lines of the
Maybe.
NFL.
And I think that that's fair. I think Kyle has the stability. I don't know necessarily if the entirety of the front office has that stability, but I can understand what you mean. I think the way that I look at it, my worry if I'm a front office guy is you trade Brock Purdy, you have your rookie quarterback, and he can't take you. You go 8-9 or 9-8, and you just narrowly miss the playoffs, even though you have such a stacked team. That would be the worst season you've had in 8 years, right?
But I think you don't trade Brock Purdy that first year, right? Like you keep him on that.
But
You
you
would have
face this.
to.
I think you face an even worse situation that you face with Brandon Aiyuk right now, with the pure threat of
If
a
you're willing
holdout.
to do it with every other player in your organization,
But
do it again.
but he'd actually have the threat of holding out. Like he would admit, I wouldn't be surprised if he held out and missed games. You know, that type of thing.
Then that's why you draft a quarterback in the first round. That quarterback should
But
be
the
good enough
point,
to keep you afloat.
and that's my point in the sense, if you're going to that rookie quarterback next year, there's a
Honestly, I don't
chance, a
even
good
think
chance
Brock
you
could
miss
get.
the
How would they
playoffs.
find Brock? Because isn't it like,
It's like 5,000, 10,000, right? Or
bro?
something.
That's
I
like
don't
his
even
whole
know.
game. That's his whole salary in one fine.
He makes hella money off endorsements. He'd be willing to do that, I think, because, like, it's not like he's missing out on a fifth-year option worth $15 million like Brandon Aiyuk. He's missing out on 800,000,
You got a point there. That's where
and
that's
that's
where it
where
was
I
like.
think the threat of a holdout is real because he's missing out on 800,000. I don't think 800,000, especially when you're talking about getting whatever it might be, $240 million. Yeah, I think that would be fine for him.
If the 49ers were to
It would be
trade
smart for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be one of those ones where you have to be, but then you remember all those fans were like, Brock Purdy would never hold out. Brock Purdy would never want more money. He's a Christian. It's like, where do you guys go? Like, right? Like, it's because if you stop playing with people's money, right? At the end of the day, who cares if he holds out, if he doesn't hold out? Go get your bag at the end of the day. How much would a team trade for Brock?
2 ones.
I said 2-1s last night. I was told I was crazy, but I think 2-1s is.
2-1s.
I think it depends. How does he look the rest of this year?
Think of it this way, though. He's like, what, 25 years old?
But you also have to cash him out.
I think a team would have traded 2-1s for Dak Prescott this year. And I think Brock Purdy has more value than Dak Prescott.
But Dak has a longer track record.
Fair, but I think Brock would have more value just on this. Assuming that he plays.
I'm playing devil's advocate, by the way. I'm playing devil's advocate. But I agree with you.
But I'm assuming that Brock plays at the same level, a top 12 level-ish type of thing for the remainder of the year. That would be 2 years of starting experience that you have with Brock Purdy being an established starter in the NFL. And that's what I think would go. I think 2-1s would be the baseline, especially given a multitude of things. One, next year's class is really weak at quarterback, right? We don't have a defined number one. And I think that if you're drafting at that 101 spot, is it worth it to take a quarterback at 101? That kind of you're going to have those conversations when you want job security, when you're going to be hiring a new head coach, maybe a new GM type thing. That could be a big question, right? And two, yeah, because of the age, because of the you're also going to, if you trade for Brock this offseason.
I was not expecting this conversation about Brock to go to trading. Rohan, you really think 2-1s?
I think so.
Now, which team would do it? Or which teams would be obviously?
I think there would be probably 12, 14 teams in the NFL.
Whoa, 12 to 14? Maybe a few.
Maybe not. I think Las Vegas. Las Vegas would be interested. You're talking about other teams. I think the New York Jets would be a sneaky team, especially given the connection that they have. Aaron Rodgers now going to be gone, very, very soon. I think that the Raiders. I don't think the Broncos would do it that early. We'll see on the returns of Bo Nix. I think Pittsburgh could very well do it. I think Cleveland could very well do it based on what they do with Deshaun Watson. Also knowing that Brock Purdy is going to be insanely cheap next year, right? Remember, Brock Purdy would be on his rookie deal. I think that in the AFC, I think the Titans would do it. I think what is that, like 5-6 teams? I think the New York Giants would consider it.
As you're saying all these teams, I'm like, oh shit! Like you're right.
Yeah.
Like these teams probably would do it.
I think New York would consider it, and I think a lot of those NFC South the Saints probably consider it with Kubiak specifically there. The Saints would consider it as their future. I think that maybe not the Buccaneers. So maybe whatever that amount is, and even if the Panthers, I think the Panthers, after striking out on the 101, I think that they could consider just going best player available with their first round pick next year, or they trade it.
If they're trading for Brock, we have to get their 101.
Probably, yeah. So probably you get the 101 and you get something. Maybe if it's the 101, you don't get 2-1s back. You get like something else, but
1 and a 3 or 1 and a 2.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I think that whatever that is, 9-10 teams that I just listed that I think could be very realistic trade candidates.
That's crazy. I was not expecting that many. But you're right. All those teams probably. There's a good argument for each of those teams. Rohan, obviously the Niners play the Rams this coming up week. What are your expectations for the 49ers against the Rams? Obviously, it should be a bounce-back game. Do the 49ers bounce back? How does Brandon Aiyuk look? How does Brock Purdy look? What are you expecting from the new look 49ers offense, right? Obviously, it's going to be no CMC, no Debo. So the game plan should be different. What are your expectations for the 49ers moving forward for the next couple of weeks without having Debo and obviously no CMC for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, with all due respect to the Rams, I think this is an ass whooping. I just don't see the way that the Rams
he said with all due respect.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see a way that the Rams win. And maybe I was too confident last week when I said the Niners would cover the 5.5 point spread against Minnesota. clearly I was wrong. They didn't even cover. They didn't even, they didn't even
You're
win.
always wrong. I actually
Yeah.
won money on that game, by the way.
You see, the Hayton. He all he does is hate on the damn team. That's all he does.
You know why? You know why I did it?
Why?
Because one of my good friends convinced me. He was like, dude, 30 plus years. Brian Flores talked about Schwartz, talked about all these defensive coordinators who do good against the 49ers. He was like, you guys should beat them, but it's not going to be by 5.5 points. It's going to be by 3. So like, oh yeah, hell yeah. I was like, we're winning by 3. So then I took the Vikings with the spread, which is a bad. I mean, I thought we are going to beat them, but not by 5.5, or more than 5.5. I also took the Saints. That was the big one. Took the Saints. They were underdogs by like, I want to say it was like 7.5. That was a good one to take.
Okay. Oh, that one. Yeah, that one was a good one. That was a good one. But I think the Niners cover 7.5 point spread on the road. I think they cover. I honestly think this has a similar raking. Remember the when the Niners won 31-10 on Monday Night Football and started their comeback back in 2022, or the year they went 3-5, and then they ended up beating the crap out of the Rams. But I think this one's going to even be more dominant. And I don't even think it's because of the offense. I think the defense is just going to smother the Rams. I don't know how that offensive line is going to hold up. I think the Rams are going to implement a game plan that we've seen them implement before. Try and go quick game, a lot of screens and things like that to get the ball out of Stafford's hands quick. And the Niners smother the linebackers. Fred Warner is going to smother that type of game plan. And I don't see the Rams being able to convert offensively that much.
I think, too, when I look at their O-line, it's going to be a little bit better. They're getting Alaric Jackson back.
They do get Alaric Jackson back.
Yeah. Now, I think you could, realistically, let Alaric go man up with one-on-one with Nick Bosa. You could slide.
I don't know if they have a choice elsewhere.
You slide the O-line the other way and you help out. And I think I think he could hold his ground, dude. He's a good offensive. I think he's a good offensive tackle. I think he's one of the up-and-coming offensive tackles in the league. He's a really good offensive tackle there. Their issue, I think, more than anything, more than the offensive line, it's their weapons. They have everyone's out. Like, it's more than anything, I think it's more so their skill positions. But what if the Niners struggle? What if we struggle? Like, what if we do? Like, a lot of people thought we were gonna blow out the Vikings. They're like, oh, it's Sam Darnold. They're not that good. Everyone thought they were going to blow them out. If the Niners come in and struggle, does that change your perception of how the 49ers season is going to go? Or is it more so a divisional rival that knows how to play you?
No, this one is one that I think that this is a true serious issue if the Niners struggle in this one. You just saw what the Arizona Cardinals did to the Rams. And I know that this is going to be a bit of a different team. You bring back Alaric Jackson, this week. I forget there's one other contributor that should be back this week. Regardless, the Niners overpower the Rams when it comes to talent. And so if your talent is struggling, I don't care how many guys you're missing. Talanoa Hufanga is going to be back. That's another thing that it seems like is going to trend likelier to happen than not. Niners, if they struggle in this game, that is a significant issue. I genuinely think that's an issue. And I know this is a division rival team that has played the Niners a ton before. But there's a reason that the Niners have had as much success as they do against the Rams. This is a good matchup for them. They've won, I believe, 9 of the last 11 matchups, with one of those losses just being the Week 18 meaningless game last year, the other one being the playoff game. This is one the Niners should win, and I think that it would be an issue, truly, if they end up struggling.
I mean, our defense struggled against the Vikings pretty bad, in the sense of the Vikings should have, if it wasn't for the forced fumble at the 1-yard line, they're up huge on us, and it's a little bit of a different conversation. Luckily, we're able to fight back a little bit to make it a closer game, but I think that's a concern. They were able to move the ball on us at will. I think they have a better run game. I think we'll probably see a little bit more Blake Corum, use him in the pass game, or Kyron Williams in the slot as a receiver. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be like, oh, they're going to eat us alive as receivers, but you probably see stuff like that. I agree with you. I think it should be an absolute blowout. I think it should be 30 to like 10, at most 10. If they score more than 10, I'm concerned for the defense, because truthfully, that offensive line is terrible. But again, Sean McVay knows how to coach, man. He knows how to get the best out of his team, even when they're outmatched. And last week, it was interesting because they got out to a bad start right away. And there's no way for them to come back. But looking at everything, do you agree Rams get blown out?
I think so. I think it's good. Like I said, I think the Niners cover. I think this one should be a pretty good win for them.
Absolutely. I agree with Rohan there. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button on Rohan Chakravarty's personal channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on Clutch Genius Sports. Make sure you share it with your family and friends. Do me a favor. Hit that like button. Hit that notification button so you know when I'm going live. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.